Pauline Corley had introduced me to a Dr. Robert Martin in Los Angeles. He's from Pasadena. And he was a great fellow to follow up from Asa Jackson in regard to gravity being an enemy. And Dr. Martin was an anti-gravity man, believed that all treatments physically should involve anti-gravity therapy. And he'd perfected the system where people put boots on with a hook in the front, hook them onto a bar and hang from the bar like bats. And in other words, totally upending themselves and totally stretching themselves against gravity. His method of treatment was gravity inversion boots that he'd. So I met this gentleman, and he bore out much of what Asa Jackson had said, that he felt that a great deal of problems of the human race were caused by gravity. And he set about his method of treatment by performing anti-gravity methods. We were able to introduce some inversion units into New Zealand and have people hanging around like bats. It really didn't catch on to any great extent, but it gave us an idea of the use of traction. The necessity, any joint suffering from a capsular pattern or any ball race type problem, that traction seemed to be the treatment of choice. We worked on a system whereby a joint could be divided on a scale of things into thirds. If a joint was limited to 1/3 of its movement extent, then we had to be very careful. If the pain and restriction was such that it was limited in its first third of movement, especially in its accessory range, we'd have to be very, very careful. We worked out a system whereby the law of a third became a method of mobilisation, whereby in the middle range of a loss of movement, it was quite reasonable to do mobilisations. Very gently, manually traction the joint. You still used your traction, but you were able to manually proceed to move the joint. Perhaps if it was in the first third of that third, you would only move it in the direction that it wanted to go, and later on, when you managed with a bit of traction and a bit of mobilisation towards the limited side, you'd be able to move into the unlimited side, you would be able to move into the limited group. The last third was the third where there was nearly full movement, but a third missing. Then you could think in terms of starting to do manipulative procedures, especially if it was an accessory range of movement of the last third of movement. You could think about that. So that was what we called the law of a third. It was this system whereby you used an assessment of the third of a range of movement to decide what course of action was it: traction, mobilisation or manipulation.